Over the weekend, my family and I went to a large shopping centre. We were in the food court to get some ice creams and were sitting across from a table of 5 teenagers. They were Aboriginal children. Thank you, AI, for drawing this picture. Obviously, they weren't wearing paint. There were 4 boys and 1 girl, the youngest being about 12, I guess, and the girl, who was the eldest, was about 15 or 16. Apart from being a bit rowdy, they were fine, just teenagers being teenagers. I went up to the McDonald's counter to get some ice creams, and I stood next to one of the boys who was also ordering some chips and drinks for his table. He handed the lady a $10 note, and she gave him a fistful of change, just a couple of bucks, but mostly in silver. I received my ice creams as he received a number of frozen Cokes and chips. As I sat down at my table, I saw the teenagers drinking their Cokes and being a bit silly, but as I said, they were mostly fine, just rowdy. It was a fairly noisy environment anyway. We were about halfway through our ice creams when we heard a coin fall to the floor. We looked over and it looked like one of the teenagers had dropped a coin. My children asked if they should pick it up and return it, but I said, no, they know they dropped it. They'll come get it. A few seconds later, another coin dropped on the floor, and then another and another. I looked over at the table and the teenagers were laughing. My kids asked me what they were doing and I just said, I don't know, but they're obviously doing it on purpose. Over the following few minutes, all their coins were now scattered on the floor, and they were having a great old time laughing and carrying on. My kids were a bit confused, as was I. It obviously became a bit of a game for them. Anyway, the teenagers finished up their drinks and then walked off, leaving all their coins on the floor. My kids looked at me and said, should we pick them up and give them back to them? And I said, no, they obviously don't want them. If you want to pick them up, you can keep them. Of course, they were as happy as Larry. They raced around and picked up all the coins. These are the actual coins on screen that the teenagers seemingly didn't want anymore. My children have since put the coins in the shared money box at home, an old ramen container that my children converted, which my wife and I put spare change in, and my kids also recycled those 10-cent bottles, with all the proceeds going into the money box. Once a term, over the school holidays, they divvy up the money and use it as spending money over the holidays. There's usually about $20 or $30 inside, not huge amounts, but they enjoy it nonetheless. But the one question that has been left unanswered, why did the teenagers throw away the coins? Or why did they not want to pick them up? I can honestly say I haven't seen this sort of behaviour before. Some might say it's only a couple of bucks, just teenagers mucking about. But I know for a fact my children would never throw away money. I would never throw away money. My kids know they can save up their money to buy things they want. Actually, that very same day in the shopping centre, before we went to the food court, my children had already bought a few lollies in a lolly shop, which was only about 30 seconds walk away from the food court. They literally sell individual lollies for like 10 or 15 cents. These boys certainly could have used this money if they so desired, not to mention McDonald's is selling 50-cent ice creams now. Some might argue that peer pressure had a part to play. It might be seen as uncool to go pick up the money in front of your cool friends. It's pretty stupid logic, but logic nonetheless. I can kind of understand it. Others might say I shouldn't be talking about this at all. This is racist, or this is unfairly targeting Aboriginal people. But I would just retort, how can we solve bad behaviour if we can't talk about it? Actually, Australian society, the Australian government, have decided that Aboriginal Australians and non-Aboriginal Australians are somehow different. We see it in our laws, we see it in our welfare system, we see it on TV and websites with those little land acknowledgement messages and those warnings about photographs of people that have died. Aboriginal people are often entitled to more government funding than other Australians, purely based on what? Ancestry? Noting that this is voluntary identification. So yes, I'm going to point out these teenagers' ethnicity because the government/society has determined that they are worthy of extra support than the rest of us. I don't agree with this, but that's the reality. So my original question could be modified a little to, despite Aboriginal people receiving unprecedented levels of funding, why are these teenagers literally throwing money away? I think that question answers itself. If somebody is given everything they need without any effort, then they'll treat that with very little regard. They're not respecting the value of money. If they can always be given more money, who cares if we throw a couple of bucks away here and there? Obviously, parenting comes into play here. I can't comment exactly what happens at home, but I could imagine these kids probably can just ask their parents, "Mum, I'm hungry. Can you give me $10 to go buy some lunch?" And their parents give them the money. Fair enough. And the next day, they can just do the same thing again. There's no need to respect money. Anyway, my kids got an early Christmas present, in their eyes, from a group of Aboriginal teenagers. We live in strange times.